So this is the layers of the epidermis, and starting off with the most superficial layer would be the stratum corneum, which is all right here, which is labeled number 2. And what it is, it mainly consists of dead, scaly, keratinized cells, which form a final barrier from the atmosphere. And down below, you'll get right here, which is the stratum lucidum, which would be labeled as number 3. And it's basically a thin, translucent zone that's seen only in thick skin. And thick skin is only seen in the soles of the feet and palms of the hands. And right below that, you'll get to the next layer, all right here, which is the stratum granulosum, which mainly consists of layers of flat keratinocytes. And the keratinocytes are found in nails and hair, and those mainly produce lipid-filled vesicles that release glycolipid by exostasis. And it's able to this layer helps waterproof the skin, and it forms a barrier between surface cells and deeper layers of the epidermis. And going lower to that, you have the stratum spinosum, which would be all right here, labeled as number 5, all right here, this orange. And what that is that it is several layers, again, of keratinocytes, and it helps provide structure, and it's a barrier at the same time. And it also contains the Langerhans cells. And what those cells do, which would be marked as number 9, which would be all the way over here, like one of these, what those cells do is it helps protect the body against pathogens by presenting them to the immune system. And now moving down a layer to the stratum basale, which is the last layer of the epidermis. It's a single layer of cells on the basement membrane, is also the deepest layer of the epidermis, that is the last. And basically what happens here is that you'd find Merkel cells, and also the cells that you can find here are the cells that produce melanin pigment, and they're produced and distributed here. And just going over it one more time, you have your keratinocytes, which is what most of the skin cells are made out of, and you have your melanocytes, which synthesizes pigment, which is melanin that shields UV, and you'll find those melanocytes as number 8 labeled, which are these green right here. And now we get to move on to all 3 layers of the skin and what's contained in here. So at the superficial layer, you'll have right here the epidermis, and below that you'll have the entire dermis, all of this. And you'll see the papillary layer of the dermis, which will be labeled as number 3, which is the higher up level of the dermis, and below that is the reticular layer of the dermis, which would be below the papillary. And you can see the dermal papilla labeled as number 5, which would be all right here, right in between. And finally, going on to our first word, which would be the hair shaft. The hair shaft is all right here above, and what the hair shaft is, it's the piece of hair that is actually going through and out of the skin, so it's above the skin. And then you'll have your hair root, which would be right here, which is inside still the dermis. And you also have your hair follicle, which would be next to it, but it's more on the higher up on the outside of the actual root, so slightly above the root. You also have your hair papilla, which would be labeled as number 9, which is down below, close to where those blood vessels are. And number 10, you'll also have your germinal matrix, close to the root. And now to a more detailed version. What you're looking at here, you'll see your erector pili muscle, which would be right here, this muscle, that too. And what that muscle does is it helps stand the hair, so you can also have goosebumps, and it helps you also get a sense of where things are on your body with the hair. You also have your sebaceous gland, which would be labeled as number 12, which is all right here around the hair. And what the sebaceous glands do is it excretes this oily substance, which is called sebum, and it mainly contains broken down cells. And now you'll move down to your pseudophorus gland, which will be labeled as 13, which is close to the erector pili muscle. And moving on, you'll go on to your Meissner corpuscle, which is still in the dermis, which would be number 14, which is right over here. You'll see your Parsinian corpuscle, which is 15, which is a little more down below this green circle. You also go down to the bulb of Croce, which is number 16, and it's slightly above what we had just gone over, the Parsinian corpuscle. You also have another corpuscle, the corpuscle of Ruffini, which would be slightly above the Pacinian corpuscle. And finally, you will have your blood vessels, which help provide a blood supply for your hair and also for the skin. And fun fact, the hair actually needs blood supply for it to grow. And finally, you'll see your hypodermis, which is down below, and that mainly consists of your fat, and that's why it's more yellow. It's the fatty layer of the skin. And what the fatty layer of skin, it is able to be a little energy reservoir, so it's able to store energy, and it also helps with thermal insulation. And the skin disorder I chose was jaundice, which is the yellowing of the skin, and sclera due to excess of bilirubin in the blood, which is also known as liver disease. So as you can see, one half would be normal skin, and the other half would be jaundice, which is when the skin appears to be more yellow. And finally, at the bottom are a couple of skin facts.